Early access game. What is the first thought that comes to your mind when you hear these words? For me, it's an unfinished product that a video game developer has put out to try to salvage what they have been working on with the intent of not letting all the resources thrown into it gone to waste. The hope that fans can see the idea that they are trying to bring to life, but just need some guidance from those fans to help make that idea become a reality, which is incredibly cool to me. This marriage of dev and community working together towards a goal can often lead to something truly special. This is where Grounded enters the picture. Releasing back in 2020 on July 28th in early access, it was a game I had high hopes for when it was first announced because the devs behind it are ones I have tremendous respect for, Obsidian Entertainment, creators behind arguably the best Fallout game of all time, New Vegas, not to mention the more recent Outer Worlds series they have created, which was another great game, the long list of accomplishments by the team. But even with the skill I knew the devs had, and the bugs that have popped up in the past games they have worked on, I really was not ready for the amount of bugs and honestly game-breaking issues I was going to encounter. From game crashes to save file corruptions, I just had to put Grounded down after a few weeks out of frustration, because the base they had created had the potential to be something amazing, and I was instantly hooked by the concept of it. I just couldn't justify investing time into something I could lose any second. So I promised myself, I will not touch the game again until it fully releases, no matter how long it takes, and man, am I glad I did. Compared to what I played back then, the 1.0 update for the full release of Grounded is a completely different experience from the one I had back then. It's night and day, there is no other way to put it. Not to mention Grounded is probably one of the best survival games I have ever touched. No matter what you do in the game, you are never wasting your time. But what exactly do I mean by that, you're probably wondering? Well, like any survival game, your goal above everything else is to survive by collecting supplies and resources to make yourself more adaptable to the environments you are exploring. To me, this starts with tools and weapons. They are how you harvest supplies and defend yourself while you're out exploring. You use axes to cut down grass, weeds, mushrooms, and more, shovels to dig up buried treasure and insects, hammers to break rocks and other similar materials, and while doing all of this, you are actively fighting different bugs and insects, which in turn allows you to harvest their bodies for materials that you can use to make even better tools, weapons that I can't forget above all else, armor to protect yourself. And you do this by taking all of the different materials you gather to a machine to be analyzed. Analyzing materials not only gives you more crafting options, but they also level up your brain power. And as your brain power levels up, you get even more crafting options. And this is incredibly important because as you make your way through the story of Grounded, you will be required to have a certain tier of weapon or tool to progress, like using a tier 3 hammer to open the latch on a giant scabby to get to a hidden lab. I absolutely love this because it really brings out that Legend of Zelda feeling of finding new items to help progress Link through the lands he explores. Or in the case of Grounded, the teens. Speaking of items, let's talk a little bit more about these weapons and armor you're going into battle with. There is a huge variety available to the player that are designed well for different situations. Daggers and spears that excel in water combat, magic candy staffs that work for range, stun, or AoE attacks, clubs that devastate enemies, crossbows that destroy flying enemies, and so on. You can't go wrong with the love put into the combat system thanks to the clever design of the weapons the player has access to. Also, you have the ability to parry attacks with weapons or shields to stun enemies or avoid damage, which adds a nice little skill gap to the combat that is wonderful to master. Then on the flip side, the armors have a variety of effects from being able to carry more materials, used for building bases, increasing damage done with arrows, better blocking ability. I mean, I can keep going here. Everything about this is just so well done, which is nice to see because it's hard to do combat right in these type of games. Also, while we are on this topic, you also have the ability to upgrade weapons and armors to increase their stats or add effects. You can peep bugs, insects to learn about their weaknesses. Then on top of all of this, as you do different actions in the world like running and fighting, you unlock different mutations that also affect various stats for the player, which just adds yet another layer to the depth of the game and leads me to my next point. Raw science. What is raw science, you ask? I have no idea, but it's basically the basis for the entire story, and also a very useful collectible you can find out in the world. Now, you use raw science at terminals scattered around the backyard after meeting a fun, loving, and cooking-obsessed robot named Burgle. Now at these terminals you have 3 options. First, let's talk about the Burgle quests. These are simple quests you can take on to earn extra raw science, like placing map markers, killing certain enemies such as spiders. Nothing crazy or innovative here, but it gets the job done, and it doesn't feel like a necessity more than something extra on the side to help you through your journey. Next, you have the Science Shop. Here you can buy new recipes that allow you to cook better food, increase the fortification of your bases, upgrades to your Scabby to detect collectibles in the world, which if you don't know what the Scabby is, it's basically your Pip-Boy from Fallout. But as you can see, there are many upgrades here that make surviving much easier. Then the final tab is called Milk Molars. Milk Molars are tooths you can find in the world that allows you to upgrade your base stats. These come in 2 types, normal milk molars and mega milk molars. The normal ones upgrade your health, stamina, healing, and even your hunger and thirst meter, which is huge because you can die from starving or dehydrating in Grounded if you don't eat food or drink water. Then the mega milk molars upgrade how many times you can carry in a single stack. So instead of holding 15 arrows in a stack, I can now hold 20. This is very useful since you really don't get a lot of space in your backpack, and you need as much free room as possible just in case you come across a much needed resource for crafting. Now while we are going down this hole of collectibles, there are trinkets you can find out in the world that improve your stats as well. Also there are scabbies you can find that give you different color schemes for your menu. That is pretty neat, but as a collectible, it feels a little unnecessary. I feel just giving people the ability to customize the look of their scabbies would have been just fine, and they could have replaced those collectibles with more hidden weapons, trinkets, or armor. But I suppose I am just nitpicking here. Now with that said, I really want to drive home how incredible this backyard is. From the castle on a picnic table, to the hot sands of a sandbox, the bottom of a koi pond, to the top of a hedge maze, it's just absolutely beautiful traveling around the world of Grounded. Every area felt so distinct and offered items I couldn't find anywhere else, so I never felt like I wasted my time exploring. Instead, I would always take notes and made sure I understood how important the resources of the area could help me down the road, or where enemies were hiding so I could avoid conflict when I needed to. Conflict is a funny thing though, and it's hard to avoid in Grounded. There are so many different insects, bugs trying to kill you, sometimes death will find you whether you like it or not. Especially at night when some of the most dangerous enemies such as spiders become much more active. But when it comes to fighting enemies one-on-one, it is a very satisfying experience. But the second when you have to start fighting more than one enemy at a time, the game can feel incredibly unfair, and you get the sense that the game was not designed to be played solo. And I truly believe that. I played through solo on the normal difficulty, and it was super brutal at times. For example, out in the world, there are these mixer stations you can defend from waves of enemies. Well, this can become very overwhelming at times, and I won't show the clip for spoilers' sake, but towards the end of the game, you have a certain defense event that you have to do to complete the game. Well, it's pretty damn overwhelming solo, and I know some people would probably say play on an easier difficulty, or use the feature where you can create a custom world difficulty that allows you to do stuff like craft items for free, or turn on God mode so you can't die. But I'm not that type of person. I like a challenge, but a fair challenge. Not to mention custom worlds disable earning achievements, and I worry certain people who don't want to play the game on custom settings will drop it before experiencing how good it actually is, because it does start incredibly slow. Then again, if you're not a fan of survival games, Grounded will not be for you, because at the end of the day, it's not some easy game that is based on Honey I Shrunk the Kids or The Bug's Life. This is a real brutal survival game that will make you earn your way to the finish when playing solo. But if you don't care about any of that, you just love building, there is a creative mode that allows you to go wild building your dream mansion in this tiny backyard that would make even the house jealous. Or you could be like me, and plant your base on top of a rock and hope nothing attacks it. Because in Grounded, if you store food or kill too many enemies, they will attack your base and raid your food, which is pretty cool. It kind of adds this defense tower element to the game and doesn't make your base this super safe haven. You have to strategically think about where you put it in the yard so it benefits you the most as a player. Definitely considering anywhere you can sleep, you can set up a respawn point, so when you're going up to fight that praying mantis in the potted plant, you can set down a bed as a respawn point, so you only have to walk a couple feet every time you die to it for the next hour, because who doesn't love a good laggy fight? Yes, I did indeed drop massive frames while fighting the mantis. It made the fight very hard, but on the bright side, outside of that fight, the only real issues I had playing Grounded was a couple crashes, I think 2, and some interesting little harmless bugs. This is all while playing on the Xbox Series X, so I can't speak for all devices of course, but it performs superbly for me overall compared to how it was 2 years ago. And also, unlike 2 years ago, there is an actual story that isn't that bad. Now, I won't get into spoilers here, but you have 4 characters to choose from at the start of the game: Max, Willow, Pete, and Hoops. I went with Pete because he kind of reminded me of myself when I was younger, nerdy, geeky, lonely. I found his dialogue to be pretty funny. I can't speak on the other characters since I didn't try them out, but I'm sure they have their own unique dialogue throughout the story, and if by chance you don't like the character you picked, you could swap out characters at any time in game, which is a very nice touch. But as you complete the main story objectives, you unlock new cutscenes when you sleep that expand on the story and why you ended up where you are. And the way it all comes together at the end is the perfect opening for a future sequel, which I very much hope we get now that they know how the mechanics and world in a game like this can work. With that said, Grounded has lived up to all of my expectations, and there isn't enough time in the world for me to go over every little detail that makes the game so unique compared to other survival games. All I ask is you at least give the game a try, because I feel like you really won't regret visiting a backyard unlike any other.